Hi everyone and welcome to another painting tutorial. So today I'm going to take you through how I painted the green marble shield that you might have seen on my Blade Guard Veteran on my Instagram page. So over a Mechanicus standard grey undercoat, I'm just going to apply a 50-50 mix of grey SEER and GAUSS Blaster Green, and just add a little bit of water to that and do 2 coats of this, see how it's looking after the second, and if you need to, definitely apply a third. Now the reason I mixed in a bit of GAUSS Blaster Green into the grey is I just wanted a little bit of a green hue to the grey tone. As the reference I was using for the green marble shield that I've done for my Blade Guard Veteran, it did have a sort of mint green hue to it, but also a little bit greyish as well. So with the base coat now done, I'm now going to move on to a mix of GAUSS Blaster Green and SYBARITE Green. Again, 50-50, and this one is heavily watered down, as I just wanted to create a shade with this. Now, just selectively, just in certain spots, I'm just going to shade down the shield. So essentially just focusing on the bottom of the shield there, as you can see. And just creating sort of random different shades across the shield. So yeah, try not to apply this to sort of specific to, you know, for example, just corner to corner. You can apply it just randomly. And also just to mention, just allow a little bit of drying time between each coat. For the purposes of this tutorial, I did just move on relatively quickly, but just allow just a little bit of time, considering the coat is really thin as well. As you can see, I haven't been putting a lot of paint on my brush. So it shouldn't realistically take too long to dry, but yeah, just make sure that those steps are dry first. And now to shading down even further, I'm just going to use SYBARITE Green. Again, this is heavily watered down. As you can see, it's a very faint application. I just wanted to make this really gradual. It's certainly a good practice when you're working over a lighter base coat, such as white, light greys, wraithbone, those sort of colors. It's really good practice to try to shade down really subtly, and whether it's using a medium to wash down mixed with the color, or if you're just using it heavily watered down in this case that I'm doing the shield. As you don't want the difference to be too stark, and it can very easily, when you're applying colors over white, for example, it can very easily look quite patchy. So yeah, as you can see, it's looking really smooth at this point, just being really patient with it and just gradually working down those colors. So now moving on to the veins for the green marble. So I decided to use a mix of OGRYN camo and ELYSIAN green. So again, a 50-50 mix of these two colors and just a little bit of water added. So as you can see, it's running quite smoothly, not too thick, but not too watered down as well. And I've now switched to my Raphael 8404 size 3-0 brush for this one. And prior to this brush, I was actually still using the same brush. However, it was one of my more, aged ones. As you can see, it wasn't really, holding a good point anymore. But to be fair, I've been using that brush for, at least 3 months, 4 months or so. So I still keep them for shading and whatnot until they come to a point where they're just no longer really usable. Because it's still handy, even once these good brushes no longer hold their point, they're still very useful for getting into smaller spaces for shading, base coating. So yeah, definitely hold on to them. Now with my previous tutorial on the white marble shield, I did sort of keep the design of the veins a little bit more simple. It was really just based off the reference that I had in front of me. A lot of the veins in that particular marble were all just sort of moving diagonally, still in that sort of random sort of lightning appearance, lightning cracks. However, this one was a little bit more complex, so I've decided to move the veins sort of diagonally, vertically, horizontally. But again, the importance of painting the veins of the marble, very, very, very similar to painting lightning, is just not to get the lines too straight. Just sort of let the brush move naturally, just keep it pointed, and not too much paint on the brush as well. Just to mention as well, if you do intend on doing details such as this on your miniatures, I'd recommend keeping if you're doing a shield, for example, just keep it separated from the rest of the miniature and just glue it on last. As you can see, I'm just using a bit of blue tack and a champagne cork, and it's a lot easier to maneuver the shield as opposed to had I had the entire miniature assembled, which is something that I definitely used to do. However, it became increasingly frustrating to try and do details such as this, and then trying to reach in to certain parts of the miniature. It was just, not impossible, but very, very difficult, much harder than it sort of had to be. So as you can see, after getting some of the forest green lines diagonally, I'm just working a few out in random sort of ways across the shield. And just to mention as well, the reason that I did mix the OGRYN camo and ELYSIAN green, I was playing around with colors and I wanted to find a sort of forest green tone that wasn't too bright but not too dark, and this is what I was able to come up with. And I personally think that it works quite well over that grey mint green tone. And now just working some CALIBAN green. Now for the most part, just following over the veins of a forest green, but really making sure that we leave some of that forest green visible. As it almost sort of begins to look like a sort of moss effect in the veins, as though it's really aged sort of marble. So yeah, really cool effect that I was able to find online, and had a lot of fun painting this. I've actually got an idea for my next one. It'll be for the sergeant of the unit. It's sort of blue and gold, so that's going to be interesting. I definitely intend on running a practice model on something separate, or even just playing around with the colors on a palette and just seeing what I can come up with. But yeah, essentially a lot of like dark blue tones, and then like a cloudy, sort of more vibrant blue tone, and then lots of gold sort of colors over it. So yeah, it'll be interesting, challenging, but definitely a lot of fun. So just continue following the CALIBAN green, again for the most part over the forest green. You can let them run a little bit out of shape to the forest green tones. However, for the most part, just following over the forest green. And I'm just going back to the forest green. As you can see here, the CALIBAN green just on its own. And also I sort of overlapped a little bit too much there. I just wanted to add a little bit more depth to it. So I've just gone back to essentially shade just very carefully just near the CALIBAN green. And now I'm just going to add some additional veins using ULTHUAN grey. So you'll notice this is quite a jump between the other two colours that we've just done. However, there are a few more steps where we're going to be shading all of this down. So don't worry if it looks a little bit too overwhelming at first. But as you can see, keeping the ULTHUAN grey veins separated, but also allowing them to overlap a little bit as well. So don't be afraid to just sort of, as you can see here, just running that over the CALIBAN green and forest green. With ULTHUAN grey, it's a wonderful colour, and it can be a little bit tricky to water down correctly. It's just my own personal experience. I've had times where ULTHUAN grey has been really hard to work with. It seems to dry quickly on the brush for some reason. However, if you just get it to a nice consistency, I'd also recommend, if you really struggle to get it at a nice consistency with water, you can add a little bit of LAHMIAN medium, as it will effectively dilute it without changing the properties of the paint. So yeah, definitely give that a go as well. And as you can see here in the top left corner of the shield, I sort of did like a burst of veins there. So again, they don't all have to just be running in the same direction. You can do certain areas of the shield where the veins are more intense and other parts where not so much. So after giving the shield a little bit of time to dry, I'm now going to shade SYBARITE green and LAHMIAN medium, so a 1:2 mix, that being 1 part SYBARITE green to 2 parts LAHMIAN medium. Don't worry about adding any water to this mix, and I'm just going to run that over the entire shield and give that a little bit of time to dry before moving on to the next step. So I'm really happy with how the shield's looking, however I want to do a few steps more. So now using some KABALITE green and LAHMIAN medium, again the same as the SYBARITE green mix, we're doing 1 part KABALITE green to 2 parts LAHMIAN medium, and again no water, and just shading the bottom of the shield here. And also just randomly placing some of the emerald green across the shield. So not over the entire shield like the previous shade, but just selectively pick out a few parts, and you'll want to layer this a couple of times, so just allow a little bit of drying time between each coat. So as you can see, the finish on those shades is very subtle, however I reckon it's added a pretty cool effect to the shield overall. And now as a final touch, I decided that the grey, the ULTHUAN grey veins were a little bit too faint, so I'm just going to go back and add a little bit more of those veins to the shield. So just really take your time with this step, as it really is the finishing touch. And just carefully working down those random design of veins. But again, I know I've already mentioned it once before, and I often mention this in many of my tutorials, but it's really important that you do have a reference in front of you. Whether it's just loaded up on your phone, or if, like me, you work in front of a computer at your paint station, yeah, definitely load up an image and just have it as a reference. And here are some photos of the completed miniature. So I hope you found this tutorial useful today. Thank you very much for watching. Please hit that subscribe button if you like what you saw today. Leave a comment below of something that you might like to see me do in the near future. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again in the next one.